Listen to me carefully, because this is not a casual moment and this is not an ordinary gathering. This is a divine appointment. You did not click on this, walk into this, or sit under this word by accident. Heaven has been watching your endurance. Heaven has been counting your tears, and heaven has been tracking every silent prayer you whispered when nobody else believed in you. I came to announce to you that lack has an expiration date, delay has a deadline, and scarcity does not have permission to live in your future. There is a sound that shifts atmospheres. There is a prayer that activates provision. And there is a declaration that causes doors to open that no man can shut. When you open your mouth in alignment with heaven, angels move, systems adjust, and resources begin to locate you. I am not here to hype you. I am here to position you. I am not here to motivate you emotionally. I am here to activate you spiritually. Tonight, today, in this moment, something is about to change in the realm you cannot see, but you will feel it in the realm you live in. God is not broke. Heaven is not empty, and your destiny was never designed to struggle endlessly. As you say this prayer, as you align your faith, as you dare to believe again, doors of provision will respond to your obedience. Opportunities will recognize your presence, and favor will start speaking your name in rooms you have never entered. Get ready, because this is the moment where prayer meets power and faith meets fulfillment. There is a difference between wishing for a breakthrough and positioning yourself for one, because heaven does not respond to desperation. Heaven responds to alignment. When you understand that your voice carries authority, you stop begging and you start declaring. From the beginning of time, God established a system where words shape world, where sound creates structure, and where speech releases substance. When you speak in fear, fear multiplies. When you speak in doubt, limitation grows. But when you speak in faith, heaven mobilizes its resources on your behalf. Financial breakthrough is not just about money showing up. It is about systems shifting, access being granted, and favor being activated. Many people pray, but they pray without understanding. They ask without alignment. They desire without discipline. But when your voice comes into agreement with God's economy, you stop asking from a place of lack and you start declaring from a place of authority. Heaven is not trying to decide whether to bless you. Heaven is waiting for you to come into position. There is provision assigned to your obedience, increase attached to your discipline, and overflow connected to your faithfulness. When you open your mouth and say what God is saying, you give angels legal permission to move on your behalf. That is why your prayer cannot sound like fear. Your prayer must sound like faith. Your prayer cannot sound like panic. Your prayer must sound like power. You are not speaking to convince God. You are speaking to command your environment. When you declare that God is your source, you disconnect yourself from human limitation. When you declare that God is your provider, you step out of survival mode and into kingdom supply. Heaven does not operate on scarcity. Heaven operates on abundance. The earth may be experiencing recession, but heaven is experiencing increase. When you align your voice with heaven's economy, you stop measuring your future by your bank account and you start measuring it by your obedience. Provision does not chase ambition. It follows alignment. Every time you speak in agreement with God's word, you are issuing a summons to resources that already have your name on them. There are doors that recognize your voice. There are opportunities that respond to your confession. There are contracts, connections, and ideas that activate when you speak in faith. This is why silence is expensive. This is why negative confession is dangerous. This is why fear-based language delays manifestation. Your mouth is not just for communication, it is for creation. When you say, God, you are my provider, you are not informing heaven. You are reminding the earth who is in charge of your supply. When you declare, I lack nothing, you are not ignoring reality. You are commanding reality to adjust to truth. Faith is not denial. Faith is alignment. And when your voice aligns with heaven, provision aligns with your life. God does not release increase to people who will misuse it, mishandle it, or misunderstand it. He releases it to those who can steward it. Alignment positions you to become a trusted carrier of kingdom resources. The reason some doors have not opened is not because God said no, it is because alignment was missing. The moment your voice, your belief, and your obedience come into agreement, doors begin to respond. You do not have to chase money when you are aligned with purpose. Money is a servant, not a master. It responds to order. It follows instruction. When your prayer shifts from Lord, give me to Lord, align me, you step into a higher level of provision. Alignment corrects your motives. Alignment purifies your desires. Alignment ensures that what God sends will not destroy you. There are blessings you are not ready for yet, not because you are unworthy, but because timing matters. When alignment happens, timing accelerates. Heaven releases what you are prepared to carry. Your prayer must sound like preparation. Your declaration must sound like readiness. God is not interested in impressing you. He is interested in entrusting you. Financial breakthrough is not just money in your hands. It is wisdom in your decisions, discipline in your habits, and clarity in your priorities. When your voice aligns with heaven, your life begins to reflect heaven's order. Chaos cannot coexist with alignment. Confusion cannot survive where truth is declared. When you pray with authority, you shift atmospheres. When you speak with conviction, resistance weakens. Your breakthrough begins the moment you stop speaking like a victim and start speaking like a steward. You are not waiting on provision. Provision is waiting on alignment. The moment you say what God says, believe what God believes, and move how God instructs, doors that were invisible become visible, pathways that were blocked become clear, and resources that were delayed begin to move toward you, because heaven always responds to alignment. There are battles you do not see, pressures you cannot explain, and resistance that does not make sense until you understand that not every delay is natural and not every struggle is financial in origin. Some resistance is spiritual, designed to exhaust you, distract you, and convince you that what God promised will never materialize. But I came to tell you that resistance is not a sign of denial. Resistance is evidence of opposition, and opposition only shows up when something valuable is trying to break through. You must understand this clearly. When God assigns provision, the enemy assigns pressure. When God releases opportunity, resistance attempts to rise. That does not mean you are losing. It means you are closed. Spiritual resistance to financial flow often manifests as repeated setbacks, constant emergencies, unexplained losses, and cycles that seem to reset just when progress begins. It is not always because of poor management or lack of effort. Sometimes it is because there is a gate that must be confronted, a stronghold that must be addressed, and a spiritual permission that must be revoked. You cannot break resistance with emotion, frustration, or anxiety. Resistance breaks when authority is exercised. God never intended for you to tolerate cycles that drain you. He empowered you to confront them. Financial flow in the kingdom is governed by spiritual laws, and where laws exist, enforcement is required. That is why passive prayer produces limited results, but authoritative prayer shifts environments. You are not asking for permission to prosper. You are enforcing what heaven has already authorized. When Jesus spoke to the fig tree, he did not negotiate with it. He spoke with finality. When he rebuked the storm, he did not explain himself. He commanded it. The same authority operates through you when you pray with understanding. Resistance thrives where ignorance lives. The moment you recognize that your breakthrough is being contested, your prayer language changes. You stop pleading and you start declaring. You stop questioning and you start commanding. Many people pray for increase while unknowingly partnering with resistance through fear-based thinking, inconsistent obedience, and divided focus. Spiritual resistance feeds on confusion. It gains strength where discipline is weak. This is why clarity is dangerous to the enemy. The moment you become clear about your identity, your authority, and your assignment, resistance begins to weaken. Financial blockage is often maintained by unseen agreements with fear, with lack mentality, with survival thinking, with past disappointments. Every time you say, this is how it always goes, you are reinforcing a cycle. Every time you expect loss, you give resistance legal access. But when you declare, this cycle ends now, you interrupt the pattern. Heaven responds to interruption. Angels move when cycles are broken by faith-filled declarations. Resistance also hides in misplaced priorities. When money becomes your focus instead of your assignment, flow is restricted. Provision follows purpose, not obsession. The enemy knows that if he can get you chasing money, he can keep you disconnected from the very source that supplies it. This is why breaking resistance requires realignment of focus. You must decide that obedience is more important than outcome, that faithfulness is more valuable than speed, and that integrity is non-negotiable. Resistance loses power when your life is ordered. Chaos attracts blockage, but order invites flow. When your spiritual life is inconsistent, financial pressure intensifies, not because God is punishing you, but because alignment has been compromised. You must also understand that resistance often comes through people, systems, and environments. Doors close unexpectedly. Promises are delayed. Support disappears. This is where discernment matters. Not every closed door is rejection. Some are redirection. Others are exposure. Resistance reveals what cannot go where God is taking you. Some relationships cannot survive your next level. Some environments cannot sustain your growth. When resistance exposes these things, it is not to hurt you, it is to free you. You cannot carry unnecessary weight and expect accelerated flow. Breaking resistance sometimes means letting go without explanation, walking away without closure, and trusting that what God removes cannot go where you are headed. Spiritual resistance is also challenged through consistent sowing. Sowing is not just financial, it is obedience in action. When you give where God instructs, you are not losing resources, you are disrupting resistance. Generosity confuses the enemy because it contradicts fear. When you sow in faith, you declare that lack does not control you. You demonstrate trust in God's supply system. Resistance depends on hoarding, withholding, and fear-based decision. Faith dismantles that structure. This is why giving opens doors that effort alone cannot. It is not manipulation. It is spiritual law. What you release in obedience returns in multiplied form when resistance is broken. You must also guard your thoughts because resistance often speaks internally before it manifests externally. Thoughts like, it's too late, you missed your chance, this will never change, are not neutral. They are assignments. When entertained, they create spiritual atmosphere that restricts flow. You are not required to accept every thought that enters your mind. Authority includes mental discipline. When you reject fear-based thinking, you weaken resistance. When you replace it with truth, you restore flow. Your mind is a gate. What you allow to dwell there determines what can move through your life. Breaking resistance also requires patience without passivity. Waiting on God does not mean doing nothing. It means remaining obedient while God rearranges what you cannot see. Resistance often intensifies right before breakthrough because the enemy senses loss of control. This is where many people quit, retreat, or compromise. But endurance is a weapon. Consistency is a declaration. Every day you remain faithful under pressure, you announce to the unseen realm that resistance will not win. Persistence enforces victory. The enemy counts on fatigue, not failure. He waits for you to get tired enough to agree with defeat. But when you stand firm, even while tired, resistance begins to crumble. Prayer that breaks resistance is specific, bold, and rooted in authority. You are not praying vague prayers hoping something changes. You are addressing patterns, cycles, and assignments directly. You are declaring that every force blocking provision is dismantled. You are commanding alignment where confusion existed. You are enforcing peace where anxiety ruled. This kind of prayer is not emotional. It is intentional. It does not shout because it is angry. It speaks because it is certain. Certainty terrifies resistance. When you know who you are, resistance loses leverage. You must also recognize that some resistance is seasonal. It exists to train you, strengthen you, and sharpen your discernment. Not every delay is an attack. Some are preparation. The key is discernment. When you grow spiritually, resistance that once stopped you will no longer have power over you. What used to intimidate you becomes familiar. What once confused you becomes clear. Growth changes your response. Mature faith does not panic under pressure. It evaluates, prays, and acts with wisdom. Resistance is defeated not just by force, but by maturity. Breaking spiritual resistance to financial flow is not about fighting the devil every day. It is about living so aligned that resistance has nothing to attach to. When your life is ordered, your prayer life is consistent, your obedience is intact, and your faith is active, resistance weakens automatically. Darkness cannot survive sustained light. You do not have to chase resistance away. Alignment does it for you. The more aligned you become, the freer your flow becomes. Financial breakthrough is not random. It is the result of spiritual clarity, disciplined obedience, and unwavering authority exercised through prayer and action. Overflow is not an accident, and sustainability is not automatic. Many people experience moments of increase, sudden opportunities, unexpected provision, but few know how to steward it in a way that keeps it flowing. God is not only interested in blessing you, he is interested in trusting you. Overflow is attracted to those who can manage it without losing alignment, without losing humility, without losing discipline. The reason some people experience breakthrough and then return to struggle is not because God withdrew his hand, but because wisdom was missing. Increase without wisdom creates pressure. Blessing without discipline produces confusion. Overflow without obedience becomes temporary. Sustaining overflow begins with understanding that provision has purpose. God does not release resources simply to relieve discomfort. He releases them to advance assignment. When you see money as a tool instead of a trophy, your relationship with it changes. You stop trying to impress people and start investing in purpose. Overflow stays where stewardship lives. God watches how you manage what you prayed for. He observes your decisions after the breakthrough. The test does not end when the door opens. The test intensifies. What you do next determines whether that door remains open or quietly closes. Obedience is not just about following instructions before the blessing. It is about maintaining alignment after the blessing arrives. Many people are obedient when they are desperate, but casual when they become comfortable. Comfort is dangerous when it dulls discernment. Overflow requires continuous sensitivity to God's voice. The same voice that led you into increase must be the voice you follow to remain there. When you stop listening, you start leaking. When you stop obeying, you start losing momentum. Obedience keeps the flow regulated. It prevents excess from becoming waste and abundance from becoming pride. Wisdom teaches you when to move and when to wait, when to spend and when to save, when to speak and when to remain silent. Not every opportunity that appears after your breakthrough is assigned to you. Some are distractions disguised as upgrades. Wisdom discerns what aligns with your assignment and what only flatters your ego. Overflow attracts attention, and attention attracts options. Without wisdom, you can overextend yourself, overcommit your resources, and overexpose your vision. Sustainability requires restraint. Just because you can afford it does not mean you should do it. Just because you have access does not mean you should enter. Wisdom protects overflow from erosion. Faithfulness in small disciplines sustains large blessings. Overflow is not maintained by grand gestures. It is preserved by daily decisions. How you budget, how you plan, how you prioritize, how you treat people, how you handle pressure, how you respond to temptation, all contribute to whether overflow remains stable or begins to shake. God looks for consistency. He looks for people who do not abandon principles when provision increases. Character anchors blessing. Integrity stabilizes increase. Without integrity, overflow becomes unstable and unpredictable. Another key to sustaining overflow is gratitude. Gratitude keeps you grounded. It reminds you where you came from and who brought you out. When gratitude fades, entitlement grows. Entitlement repels flow because it replaces dependence with assumption. When you begin to expect instead of appreciate, your heart posture shifts. Gratitude keeps your spirit open and your perspective clear. It turns provision into worship instead of consumption. A grateful heart remains teachable. A teachable heart remains aligned. Alignment preserves overflow. Wisdom also teaches you to build, not just enjoy. Sustained overflow requires systems. Systems for saving, systems for giving, systems for investing, systems for rest. God is a God of order, not chaos. When your finances lack structure, pressure increases even in abundance. Systems reduce stress and protect peace. Peace is part of provision. If increase costs you your peace, it is not aligned. Wisdom prioritizes sustainability over speed. It understands that steady growth outlives sudden spikes. You must also understand the role of generosity in sustaining overflow. Generosity is not a reaction to abundance, it is a requirement for it. When you give consistently, you keep circulation active. Stagnation begins when hoarding replaces trust. God designed provision to flow through you, not stop with you. When you become a channel, supply increases. When you become a container only, pressure builds. Generosity keeps the flow healthy. It keeps your heart free and your perspective eternal. Giving is not about losing, it is about maintaining movement. Overflow is also sustained by discernment in relationships. Not everyone who celebrates your breakthrough should have access to your resources. Wisdom teaches you boundaries. It teaches you to distinguish between needs and assignments, between compassion and enabling. Overflow attracts requests, expectations, and sometimes manipulation. Without discernment, you can exhaust yourself trying to please everyone. God did not bless you to become a rescuer. He blessed you to remain a steward. Boundaries protect your energy and preserve your assignment. Saying no is sometimes an act of obedience. Rest is another overlooked key to sustainability. Burnout is not a badge of honor, it is a sign of imbalance. Overflow requires rhythm, work and rest, sowing and waiting, action and reflection. When you ignore rest, clarity diminishes. When clarity diminishes, decisions suffer. Wisdom values rest because it values longevity. God rested not because he was tired, but because he established a pattern. Patterns preserve power. Without rest, overflow becomes exhausting instead of empowering. Sustaining overflow also requires humility. Humility keeps you connected to source. Pride disconnects you from instruction. When you start believing that your intelligence, your strategy, or your effort alone produce the increase, you stop seeking guidance. Humility acknowledges partnership with God. It keeps prayer central even when pressure decreases. Prayer is not just for crisis, it is for continuity. Staying connected ensures that correction comes early before damage occurs. You must also prepare for seasons of recalibration. Overflow does not mean constant expansion. There are moments when God slows you down to strengthen foundations. Wisdom recognizes these moments and does not resist them. Recalibration protects future growth. If you refuse to adjust, you risk collapse. Obedience during recalibration preserves momentum. Adjustment is not regression, it is refinement. Other overflow sustained through wisdom creates impact beyond you. It blesses generations. It opens doors for others. It funds vision. It builds legacy. But legacy requires patience. It requires long-term thinking. Wisdom looks beyond immediate gratification. It plans for tomorrow without fear. It understands that true wealth is not measured by accumulation alone, but by